Hello, and welcome to StoryFellas, a podcast where we make stories and we break stories. I'm your host, Tommy Antonucci.
And I'm your host, Zach Lovelace.
And normally on the show, we improvise a story using prompts and scraps of ideas. However, this is a unique episode. We're going to do a discussion episode because me and Zach have both been under the weather, and we just need to just chat it out, you know?
Yeah, we're just breaking it up. I mean, you can see behind me, those who are watching on YouTube, which you should if you don't already, there's clutter. And what the cluttered room I'm in, it's indicative of the cluttered mind that I have. The end of the year, there's so much happening. Before getting on the mic, we were talking, and it was just recapping the past week, and there were like 15 episodes of my life that happened within that week that have just zonked me. And so we were just talking about like, hey, shake it up. Just make it a little easier, a little less creative legwork here.
Yeah, if you like these episodes where we just discuss stuff, let us know. But I think it'll be a fun episode. Before we get into the thick of it, I also wanted to let everybody know, if you're keeping count, this is, if our math is correct, this is episode 49, which is a feat. That's almost a year's worth of episodes, which has been awesome.
Yeah.
For our special, I think we might have last episode alluded to this a little bit, that for episode 50, we're going to release a little special that you guys have not heard about. But we are going to release the unaired first episode of StoryFellas.
Episode 0.
Yeah, back when we were booting this thing up, we recorded a bunch of episodes. We kind of placed them in the order that we wanted to release them. But the very first one that we released, we just never found a good slot for it. And we decided eventually, hey, let's save this and we'll release it at a fun moment.
This was a year ago, more than a year ago for us, because we recorded, I think, starting in November. And we recorded a bunch of episodes just to try and get a batch, because that's something that we've learned wisdom-wise for launching a podcast, is not to just launch an episode and then you're on the hook for an episode every week, but you do them in secret, basically, and then launch 4 or 5, however many to begin with. And we developed a nice little menu of different episodes, and the unaired one was just like, it just didn't work. It didn't have that high energy of like some of the crazier episodes that we'd come up with. And so it was just like, not that it's not good. I think it's actually a great, really impressive first outing for us. But we'll let you be the judges, obviously. I think it's going to be a good episode, but it is, I hadn't thought about it in a while, but that makes sense that it just kind of got shuffled out of the mix.
Yeah, I think we wanted to, like, it felt weird to like push it to like be like, oh, the first episode was actually, we released it 7th. So we were like, let's just save this. So if you listen to next week and you're like, the energy feels weird, you can just think how far we've come. Yeah. how much we've grown. I've not listened to that one in a long time, so I don't really remember much about it.
Yeah, I'm going to listen to it for the first time in a year, basically, alongside you guys. And I'm excited because, I do remember it being, the energy was a big thing for us.
Which, to be fair, that was the first time we were doing it in this format. I think there's like a way, way, way in the past super proto one that was like didn't have enough form to actually like release or anything. Like I don't even know.
Recorded.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we were just practicing. So this one was us getting our sea legs, figuring out how this whole thing worked. But hey, we're like 50 episodes in. Seems worth celebrating. We're gonna do a blast to the past next week. A little behind the scenes, and then we'll be back post 50 with all sorts of crazy stuff. Probably more stories.
I mean, more crazy stories probably. But I'm excited for the unaired pilot to air, and then the super secret stuff we got coming up too.
Super secret stuff. We might have some more faces on the podcast down the line. So if you are tired of the two of us, stay tuned, because there will be someone else to dilute this podcast.
A third person to not laugh.
But today we are going to be discussing what I have written in the notes are discussing our short film blunders, because we have both worked on short films and made our own and have learned a lot of things along the way. And I thought it'd be a fun topic to discuss what we've learned in our experience of working on little productions and sets and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's a great learning mechanism if you're looking to get into filmmaking. I mean, if you just enjoy the storytelling aspect, writing and that kind of stuff, I can understand it maybe not being a total application, but I'm pretty sure most of you who like this podcast and who are listening can get something out of listening to how we bring these stories to life, or stories that we've thought of in the past, rather.
Yes.
And that really the short film as a format is just a learning tool. Like it's just meant for experimenting, having an idea, trying to bring it to life, and then running into reality, basically. And the blunders aspect is what really, that's the film school part of it. That you walk away and it's like, man, I would never have asked for that to have happened, but I'm glad that it did, because it made a real impression on me as a filmmaker. And so now going forward, I'm going to make sure that, I don't have X, Y, Z. I won't spoil the episode for you, but have this problem, that problem, whatever. You formerly went to film school. So
Yes.
you tell me, you start off, in terms of short films, like how many did you make while you were in school?
So there was our program. We made one official one that that was ours, that we had written. Well, that's not exactly true. Early on, we had these things called cycle projects where we had a small cohort, like a team of like 5 or so, and we would cycle. It felt very much like Saturday Night Live-esque thing where like weekly it'd be like we'd all bring scripts, like we have some sort of rule we had to abide by, like, oh, there's no dialogue in this one or something like that. And then we'd all take a hand at writing things. And then we'd bring them to our like Monday. And then we would kind of vote within our group of which one we wanted to do. And it was a lot of times, it would either be like, we didn't try to force this, but like in my group, it'd be like me or my friend, Ephraim. Like, I think we did some other people's scripts too, but ours were like very doable. Where some of them we loved, but they were like, took place in like Aladdin, Arabia, and we're like broke film students. And we're like, I have no idea how to even like do that. There was one, and again, love this. Like if we could have done it, it was like, there was like an ant, like a character was in the ant, and at the end it's like, and then the ant turns up and it winks at camera, and we're like, we don't know how to do that. Like, so it was more logistics. Like,
yeah,
I think me and my friend just knew how to write something interesting, but within like our limitations.
Knowing your limits, you know how to actually make it happen. Yeah, that's funny. I think the primary thing there is that film students are too afraid to fail or to look bad. Because, that type of thing, you can do it. It'll just be bad and you have to own it. And that's funny. Like, or try and make it funny, That's true. And I feel like, and I'm guilty of that too, because you want to do something that looks cool. Almost pretty much none of my stuff, they probably live on a hard drive, but they're not public facing just because you're early on. It's trial by fire. You learn a lot, but you're not like proud of the stuff you're making in that phase because it's very new. But anyway, you do learn more. You learn to come to terms with it, is what I should say. Because I felt the same way with stuff that I did, and a lot of it was just like me and my brothers or something playing with action figures in the backyard, or then like formally actually getting a shot through Campus Movie Fest. So you went through school. I was at like a middle of nowhere commuter college, and this traveling student film festival called Campus Movie Fest came to my school, and my friend convinced me to do it. And for a long time, I didn't want to look at the films that we made, even though they were well received at the time. I'm acting in them as well, so there's that kind of aspect to it where it's like, well, I just can never enjoy anything that I'm prominently featured in. That is, unless it's like a goofy skit or short or something, because like I will make myself laugh, which is interesting. Anyway, you were gonna transition us, I guess.
I like this bouncing back and forth, like of just origins. I was just gonna fill in that detail of, we had these cycle projects. We would vote on a script. We would each kind of take a role. Like someone was the DP, someone was kind of producer, logistics, sound guy, yeah, all of that. And then we would film it. And usually they'd be like a 1 to 2 minute little film. And it was cool. It was cool to get your hands dirty and stuff. And then later on, we also wrote a feature. For those who listen, Cadby, early episode was the feature that I wrote, which we reworked in this show. So go check out Cadby if you want to hear more about that, the new version of it. And then we wrote a short that we would actually like get a different team. We kind of like assembled a team, Avenger style, and then you would go make the short. And that was like higher caliber. Like that was more than like a 1 minute little random shoot that you're doing in a week. This was like, oh, this, I have to have a good story and lines and dialogue and stuff like that, which I like bouncing back and forth. So we'll go back to you because I want to hear more about Campus Movie Fest, and then we'll get to some of the roadblocks that I ran into when I started making my film.
So Campus Movie Fest is the world's largest student film festival. And I don't know how they actually ended up at Georgia Gwinnett College, which was, like I said, a total commuter college. I was just there to knock out my core classes. I don't think I ever knocked out anything other than a core class before I dropped out of college entirely. So that's all this is my entire college career, basically. It was just a couple of years there, but it was long enough for them to come out. And I think just one kid petitioned for them to come out, and he had heard of them. But they were an Atlanta-based company, actually, out of Emory. And what they do is they give you, as a student, they give you a week to make a movie. They give you free gear, usually like an Apple computer and like a Panasonic something or other. The gear got better over the years, but what I had was just like total garbage. No offense to Campus Movie Fest. I think they know that. I worked for them as well, so I can say this. But yeah, and you had 5 minutes. 5 minutes maximum, not a frame more.
That's like, when you think about it, that's a long film in today's YouTube standards. Totally. Like anything pushing 4 is like, oh, that's a long film.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. And especially since, like you said, with like YouTube, it feels more appropriate for something funny. But most entries that I found were not funny. They were not trying to be funny. They were trying to be legitimized by doing things, which is just something that I did too. Like the film I made, the first one is called A Boy and His Bike. And it doesn't really fit in the rest of my filmography because it's so sentimental and it's so Americana, about a boy or a grown man in his childhood bike, like riding it to the birth of his first child. And so I play that man. And then my younger brother, we actually taught him how to ride a bike in that film. And it was wild, but I'm jumping into it now. I'm jumping into the actual nuts and bolts of it. But that was my first short film. I made another one with Campus Movie Fest. And the cool thing with them is that they do like an Oscars at the school. So you win against your classmates or whoever else is participating. And then it goes on to compete nationally. And so my friend and I, who had done A Boy and His Bike, we won at our school. And then we went and we actually were nominated for Best Story. And we flew out to the big California event thing. And the kids from Super 8, because this was right when Super 8 had come out, were the ones who read the award for Best Story. Like, so they were reading our names or whatever. We didn't win that, but it was cool. It was, definitely, I think the most I'd traveled up until that point. I don't think I'd ever been to the West Coast. So obviously tons of potential with this as a short film entity, Campus Movie Fest. I would recommend, if you're interested in any of this and you're in school, obviously, to hit them up and see if they don't come out to your school or whatever. I haven't really kept up with them for quite some time now, but just great work at giving you the tools and giving you the ability to just explore. Because that was always the biggest thing, is like, well, I don't have a camera.
Yeah.
And now they say iPhone has got the great camera, whatever. Smartphones have great cameras. But I don't know. I still don't think it can compete with like just a camera that's built for that kind of thing. Not this such a multi-purpose tool. But
anyway. It's better. The smartphone cameras are better than the cameras I started on when I was like a kid messing with cameras, which is crazy. So you can do so. And if you get audio right, then the visuals can be a little bit forgiving, So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That was actually.
I would almost invest more in like some good lavs or something rather than, if you can't 100%. Get the camera.
And that's actually what we did for A Boy and His Bike. The number one, like the best thing that we learned from it that wasn't a failure, was I just had an intuition. I was like, we can't do any audio. The audio is going to suck. Like we don't even, I don't think we got a mic, like out of all the gear they gave away. Maybe that was the deciding factor. And so we just went basically silent film. It was just music the whole time. And then you heard one line of dialogue at the end, which I do think I recorded on my phone. And we just ported it over to Adobe or whatever we were editing on. And it works. It totally works.
Yeah.
Because we didn't ask you to suspend your disbelief too much, to like sit there and listen to, kind of
the audience is going to love that.
To not suffer through that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what would you
I
say
think is smart because you want to, I don't know, if you push I think I might've said this to other people, maybe to you as well. But like when I'm editing and I'm trying to be like, oh, I want to do this. If you can't like nail the thing, then just like avoid it. Like just be like, I want to do this one effect. And it's like, oh, it's just not working, but the piece works without it. I'm just going to ditch it, like Kill Your Darlings, because it's like by like trying to be this audio that when you can't deliver on it, and it's like, okay, it just makes the whole thing suffer, where just choosing to be a short film probably elevates the whole piece if you couldn't deliver the audio properly.
Absolutely. I mean, that's knowing your limits. Knowing your limits is so... And that's probably really succinctly summing up everything that we're going to say. It's just that both of us either learned, if we found a limit and we went over it and it didn't work out, which has happened plenty of times. And there's lots of stuff even with these other films that I've made that, I just couldn't pull it off. And it shows or whatever. And I want to ask you more about specifically your first one that you're like, this was mine, not just one of the cycle films. Yeah. That you're like, okay, this was my film, and what was the biggest blunder? The biggest thing that comes to mind.
The biggest blunder, the first film, the one that I actually did in school, that I wrote and recruited people, and I was the director on, was called Seven Deadly Kin, which is, I might have talked to you about this at some point. It's a family reunion of the seven deadly sins personified, and which I really like the script. The first like micro blunder that I won't fully count is that it was like a 20+ page script, which would have been like 20+ minutes. And my professor was just saying like, this is too long. Like, you're not going to be able to do this. Like, you won't have the time to get it done. So I
that's awkward territory for a short.
Yeah. It's just like, that's how the story came out. Sometimes like, I'm like, oh, this could have been like a cooler novel or something. Oh yeah. Because, flashing forward, when we aired this and showed it, like people would say, my classmates would say, oh, that's really cool. I don't really understand why this. And I would have an answer for everything that they pointed out because it was part of the cuts. Like there was like backstory that just, I did not have time to do. Okay. So that was like a little thing, but that's just logistics. The biggest blunder was that I went to my hometown and I found this bar because the whole idea was they were going to go to a bar, and the bartender who works there reserves a night for them, like has some deal with them and keeps the bar open just for them to have the reunion. And that feels like a very fitting place for sins to have a reunion, is this bar. And this guy was like super cool. He was like, yeah, no, we're happy to do that. You can do it like after we close one day, we can have a guy just like hang out or whatever. Super chill, even like signed a location thing. So it's like, nice. Cool, we're good. And then I came back passing through like a week before the film, like we were gonna shoot. And I saw a big sign on the window saying closed, like for lease. Like they had closed the business. Like they didn't have the building anymore. And I was like, so what was that guy doing?
It's like, how did
it was like, I made this deal like probably a few months ago. So maybe something just went south with the business like in that time, but he's not thinking to call me. I'm just like some film student. Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I just scoured Airbnbs. And this is all kind of one domino of like what messed everything up. But I scoured Airbnbs and I tried to search a bunch, and I messaged people, and I was upfront, and I would advise anyone, don't be sneaky if you're going to film in someone's house. Like tell them straight up and be like, hey, I'm trying to do this little film or YouTube thing. And some people were like iffy about that. But I found this one house and they're like, oh yeah, we have a relative that does this. We're super good with that. You can do whatever you want here. Super nice couple, super unique space, cozy space. But then the problem I had was the entire script was written for a bar. And I had also done storyboards and blocking for a bar, which obviously a bar is very long. Very different. Yeah. Very long. Like everything's very long, where now we're like in a house. So the script changed to this guy instead of the bartender hosting. Just this dude would host them, has some agreement. Doesn't make sense in the film because I had to cut all that stuff out of why he lets them in the house. But they all sat in a circle in the living room. And so it was like fun, but also crazy at the same time, because my friend that I mentioned, Ephraim, was my DP on that film. And I had this great cast of actors. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. We're going to get to yours, but I feel like this is all just a bunch of stories. I was trying to find actors for this, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to find these guys? I need 7 of them. Yeah. The guy, the owner of the house, was literally the owner of the house. Like, he was a dude. He had this unique look and like a ponytail. And I was like, do you want to be the guy like who like hosts them? I only need you for like 3 shots. And he's like, yeah, brother, I'll do it. Yeah, it was kind of like that. But then the rest are students, and I went and I was talking to someone. I don't even remember how this happened, but I think maybe I knew of someone there, and I went to the table, or I was talking to someone. I was like, oh, are you an actor in the acting program or whatever? I'm looking to fill like 7 slots of whatever. And they're like, I'm actually having lunch with like it was like a acting for film class. Oh, okay. And I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to talk to them. And they were all like, I basically cast all of the characters from that table, from that lunch.
You're like, what sin do you struggle with?
Yeah, which one do you struggle with most?
I struggle with lust. You didn't have to say it. I could see it.
I could see it in your eyes. But so then I cast them. But anyway, the long story long is that we would film this. We're at the house. This is all at night, so we're doing mostly night shoots. But we would film with the people at night, all the things that we could fit in and plan the schedule, and that would go until like, I don't know, late, like 9, 10, 11, something like that. And then me and my friend Ephraim would sit down in that house, and we would look at our schedule for the next day, and we would re-storyboard everything, because I had to do it. Like, all of this work was done way ahead of time. But
for the bar, yeah.
Yeah, for the bar, but then none of it was done for this house. So we had to like literally go and like, okay, here's this shot. What if we put them, what if it was, they were here instead? Because we had to position them and decide like, where do they stand in the house? Where, so it was like annoying, because it was like, oh, all that work went down the drain, and I just had to redo it the night before. But it was also like, I don't know, look back and it's like, that was just fun also, staying up late and just having to solve the problems. And then we'd stay up till like 1, and then meet up with friends and go to Sheets, because it was open like all night, and we would get like late night food, and then we'd sleep in, get up, get ready, get things set up. And then the actors would come back in the evening, and then they'd act, and then we'd do the same thing, and we had to re-storyboard everything that night again. So it was like trial by fire. All in all, I was very proud with how the film came together. Yeah. Like, it's weak in the sense of like where I am now. Like, I'm like, oh, I could have done things so much better, and I could have made it sillier and funnier and not so serious at the same time.
But now you always have it in the back of your head that you're like, this location, I got to have a backup just in case. Or don't make it so hard to get, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also is just like a lesson in flexibility, because things tend to go south just in video production stuff. Like, you have to be ready, and you have to be ready to improvise. Like, even in corporate commercial stuff, like your audio receiver doesn't work. You're like, okay, what can we use to do audio? Or could we film something here that doesn't need audio at all? And just being able to not panic in those moments and just try to figure out, well, what can I do? What's the best I can do with what I've got going for me right now?
Yeah, that mindset is really what a lot of this beats into you. And if it demoralizes you, then you're probably not cut out to be a filmmaker, because you're right. It is just kind of 4D chess / Rubik's cubing all the time, where you're just, and I love that for like behind the scenes stuff. You watch behind the scenes, commentary on DVDs back in the day, and then on YouTube now. And it's super insightful, because you'll find like, oh, that day, this camera wasn't working, and so they had to shoot it with this other camera, or this actor had actually broken his foot. That's like the classic, oh, did you know Viggo Mortensen broke his foot in this scene kicking the orc helmet, and they did have to shoot around that he ended up breaking his foot. But that stuff is so fascinating, because I'm just inherently, you give me a problem and my mind is just going to be sitting there, like either in the front or in the back of my mind is just grinding on all these problems. And so, you live for it. You live for those.
It's It's like that scene in Apollo 13 where they're like, they have to build this out of these scraps, and it's like that's just what filmmaking is sometimes. And you're like, and that's why like a lot of pre-production, the more pre-production you can do, the better, because you can plan for. You can't plan for everything, but you can plan more. You like think, what do I do if this audio thing breaks? Well, I'm gonna have a secondary audio thing. If this location is rainy that day, what could I do with that day? Like, again, you won't be able to do it for everything, but the more you think through all your logistics, the more prepared you'll be for when things go sideways. So that's the story of that film. But I want to hear some of yours, man.
Yeah. So that just reminds me, I can't remember who says this quote. I was just trying to look it up. Somebody said like, making a film is one thing, but making a film under the circumstances. That's really what the challenge is. It's like making that film under those circumstances, because it's never in a vacuum. It's never like, hey, this was just perfectly executed. Like there's just always elements to it that are never going to be right, whether it's like relationship issues with the director and the cast, or two cast members, or whatever. I have so many battle scars from so many different productions that I've been on that just it's hard to kind of boil it down, which is why we're talking about short films right now, because I think it helps really focus in on like that resourcefulness. Like you have really no resources to your name. You don't have any, I can't buy my way out of things. But A Boy and His Bike, I pretty much covered. The big thing was that my younger brother couldn't ride a bike. So we had to teach him how to ride a bike throughout the movie. And really, it seamlessly worked. Like it's a total magic trick where a lot of times one of us would be like on the camera and the other one would hold Andrew and then on the bike and then push him. He's not pedaling, he's just steering it, and it's just long enough to get off camera. And then the other guy, grabs him. And there was one time that we took an absolute tumble down this hill. I'm trying to remember exactly. Man. I don't even think we used this shot in the film, which is funny. Because he's coming down a hill and he was supposed to brake, and we were really trying to walk him through like what it meant to brake. And I mean, he was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. It wasn't like he was, like didn't know how to do it or like understand it. But I was running backwards and we were trying to get a shot coming down the hill. So my friend in DP was like also on the camera going backwards. And what ended up happening is that he just didn't brake at all. And so it came down to it. Like I needed to like grab the handles, and basically I grabbed the handles and the whole thing just tumbled over us. Like he tumbled over me, the bike tumbled over me.
Oh my gosh.
Like that whole thing, we went all the way down the hill, but we basically just had bruises. It wasn't a big deal. And I remember afterwards being like, we'll buy you that Happy Meal, bro. We'll buy you that Happy Meal. We're going to McDonald's right now, man. And cause he was like, take me home. And I was just like, no, I'm kidnapping you. We have to finish the movie. But that's certainly like bodily harm. I'm trying to avoid that at all times now, for anybody, obviously. But I like what you said about like your professor saying initially that this was too long, because I think and that was solved through Campus Movie Fest rules, obviously only allowing it to be 5 minutes. But like you said, even 5 minutes is an eternity in terms of storytelling and stuff. So those types of blunders is I would always go shorter. Like just for all my short films, just the one of the top layers of wisdom is just like, it doesn't need to be that long. It doesn't need to be that. Or if you
it makes everything easier if you can shorten things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the big one though that I really felt the heat was a film called Nightbird. It was a horror drama that I wrote and directed. It was my first directorial debut. The other thing was just producing and acting in it. And my friend and I, we had like a hand on directing. Like you could say that there were scenes and stuff that I did, but just being so, everybody's wearing so many hats. It's like, it's kind of blurry after a certain point. But Nightbird, I had the location drop last minute. And so I needed to film in my friend's apartment. They stepped up and they let me do that. And there were just crazy things that happened, like one girl is smoking a cigarette in the film, and she put the cigarette out on my friend's couch. So they she burned a hole in their couch, and I had to tell them.
Now, did the actor just decide that and like was like, oh, this is a creative choice? Oh, okay.
It was just an accident, which is even more of like Man, I'm just the one on the hook for it though. The crew nicked their cabinets as well, which had just been painted, and unplugged the sound guy, unplugged the fridge. So because he's hearing the fridge buzz, right? But he just forgot to plug it back in. So all of their groceries were totally wasted. So stuff like that, where it's like, man, just being aware of anything that's going to go wrong is going to go wrong. And, being, really good at apologizing.
Please
forgive me. And like begging people to like change things. Obviously the location issue was a big deal, but I don't think you really felt it narratively, but that film was like 17 minutes, which is an eternity. It's an eternity.
I couldn't have guessed that it was 17 minutes, which I guess is a testament to actually, it moving.
It got cut back down to 14 minutes.
Okay.
So that just initial cut was 17. It was that for a long time. And then a California guy who was interested in it, a screenwriter dude, was like, you should cut it down and let me sit with you and help you cut it down. And so we cut it down to 14. I don't even know what got cut out of that 14 minutes now, or the 3 minutes that went away, right? But one of the biggest things I would say is planning your film. I had a big fight scene. It was like the climax of the film, and I shot it over 2 days, and I just would not do that ever again going forward for a short film anyway. You just lose so much momentum with your actors, like the headspace that they're in, and like you're coaching them to try and get them to deliver a performance for you. And then we just cut it right in half, and we had to pick up, and our DP had to like relight the scene. It was just all of these things that were like, that just made the whole thing logistically harder, even though it was done in 2 days to make it logistically easier in some other ways. So there's always the cost analysis thing going on. And so, yeah, I just think always going shorter, you just reduce a lot of that, and then trying to do things in one go. Like, I understand why people do one take films. Because then editing wise, it's super easy. But that would be one of my biggest things.
It's funny because after being a film student, I probably wouldn't let a film student film in my house, just because an older filmmaker like our age or later, because that has experience. But I just films, like people would they'd tell us to put your keys in the fridge so that you couldn't leave without plugging the fridge back in.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
We had a friend who said he did that, and he's like, "Where are my keys?" "Oh yeah, they're in the fridge." He grabbed them from the fridge, did not plug it back in.
Oh.
And they called him. They're like, "Hey, all our groceries are bad," and he had to pay like $300, $400.
So I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who had that.
Oh no, I think that happens all the time, especially in young filmmakers. But same stories, like people nicking things, like places. Like I'd hear from people, it's like, oh, this family had one rule, like don't touch so and so, and someone nicks it. Like that's like old thing that they nick, and it's just like, I don't know, like especially when you're younger and you're still learning, like you're just moving quick. Yeah. Someone like if you came and you're like, hey, I was going to film something in your living room, I'd be like, okay, you're not going to like blindly rush into this. There's like you've done stuff about
sixth sense that you develop of just like, man, I can just see that happening, and I'm going to work hard to not make it happen. And so, but at the end of filming days, you're so zapped because your mind is so stretched and just trying to be aware of everything. And that's from the director's seat, I guess, like our producer seat, even, because I'd ride my producer like a horse, dude. Like just having him go out and get things for me and like just manage things. That's getting a great producer. I would trust a young filmmaker if like you were the producer for them,
like or keeping them in check.
Like you bring me on, you can film in my house, but you got to let me produce it because I got to have some say outside of just being the homeowner. If you're going to be there too, that also helps too. And like producing and being like, hey, let's not do this, or we can do this or whatever. Yeah. Because the director's really just trying to get the vision across, and then but the producer's like making sure everyone stays happy, like making sure all this stuff. I can't say I've ever really struggled with that aspect of it. Not to say that people I'm sure they've been unhappy on my sets. Going long is probably the biggest thing, just like riding my actors too hard and my crew. Like, hey guys, we didn't really plan for this aspect, but we're going to go for another 2 hours. as these guys futz with this light. And, you as an actor are like, dude, my juice is gone. Like I've done this scene 15 times. I'm not getting paid for it. But just really going hard in the food department, I think helps.
Getting him a lot of snacks.
Yeah, snack them up or just like, hey, what, custom order from wherever you want. Like I will get that for you. People tend to be pretty negotiable or agreeable when they have a full stomach.
Yeah. I have some other stories. They weren't from ones that I directed, but I helped on, and they're still funny because I was a assistant director, an AD on a lot of films, which is like a good role of mine. It's very logistics. It's very timekeeper. It's kind of the bad guy on set because they are the ones telling everyone else, we don't have time to do this thing that you want to do. But you need that person because otherwise you make half a movie and then you have to leave your location. But there was one on, again, I just keep name drop. I'm going to have to send Ephraim this episode because I'm talking about him a lot.
Wow, dude.
I was AD on his film, which was cool. It was a very fun set to be on. He basically paid someone, there was this house for sale, and he paid them to just be like, can we use this house for like 2 weeks or whatever, or a week, or I can't remember how long. And like, just don't sell it. Like we're going to be here in set dressing it and doing all that stuff during that time. And they're like, yeah, cool. So we had the full run of this house. We had all these people here. We had friends set dress it to make it, because it was this suspense thriller of this guy, like kind of a split personality-esque thing.
Okay.
Where this guy, and then he keeps realizing that people are getting tied up in his basement. And you don't ever see that side of him, but like you only see like the innocent side of him. So it was cool. It was like this weird kind of suspense horror thing, and it's funny because the guy who was playing that guy is a goofball. So that's not who he is in real life. But it is like a darker tone of film. The one fluke in the thing with this whole rental agreement is that I guess they did not tell their realtors that this arrangement was being made.
Oh,
so
boy.
Realtors throughout the entire shooting process would show up. And that was problematic for a lot of reasons, because the first time they showed up, it was like dark. I think it was like fall, so it got dark really early. There's like a knock at the door, and like we're like, oh, and I think maybe I open it, or the director opens it. And the guy's like looks really confused because there's just lights blaring from this thing. Like it's just lights everywhere because it's a film set. And the realtor looks like, hey, what's going on? And he has like a couple with them. And we're like, we're filming a thing here. Did the owner not tell you? And they're like, no. And they're like, wow. Can we see it? And we're like, I guess so. Like the first people that came, we were like, sure, if you want to. They're filming downstairs. But the whole place was set dressed to be like really creepy looking and old. Like everything was like old phones were hung on the walls and old artwork. Like it did not look good. It was not like it was an eyesore of a house. First off,
blood everywhere. But
the funny, they're like, is there a basement? And we're like, yeah. And we went down into the basement, and there were like probably 8 people tied up with gags, like in the basement like this. But they were like very friendly, or like, oh, hey, it's nice to meet you. And like the couple couldn't get out of there fast enough. They were like, I don't know what's happening. And the realtor looked so mortified that this is the house that he's showing this couple. He's like, there's literally people tied up in the basement. And
that's wild, man.
It is. And then more people would come, different realtors would come. And to the point that I talked to the director, I was like, I'm just going to send these people away. Like, I'm going to say no. Like, we're literally, like, there's C-stands everywhere. It's not safe for them to come in here.
Yeah.
And, like, they would be bent out of shape. And I tried calling the owner. I could never get a hold of them. And I was just like, hey, I tried to be polite, but I was just like, hey, we rented this place from you, but people keep showing up. So if you're able to talk to them and let them know, like, hey.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a lapse in communication, but that story of touring the house with people tied up in the basement was.
Oh, I'm sure those
highlight
people who went in for that tour tell that same story, and I bet they love it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Maybe they bought the house. They're like,
Yeah.
yes, it suited what we were gonna do.
Yeah, I was
going
going to say, like, there's something I really like about this. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but I really like that. I hope this doesn't awaken anything in me. No, dude, that's so funny. I'll double back. The film that I worked on with my friend, we won Campus Movie Fest, like a specialty prize. So we got 10 grand and we poured it all into a short film, which now I'm like, I would have made like 5 short films, 5 $2,000 short films, not one $10,000 short film, just big dumb move. But the film we made is called Here the Vulture Waits. And of course it's like our swing at No Country for Old Men / I don't even know, like a neo-Western type thing. And it's about an older sheriff. This is another thing. Don't write characters that are hard to find. Like, like an older guy, like a guy who's good at acting and old, but available that's just such a hard Venn diagram to hit. Because if they're older and they haven't been an actor successfully, then they're probably not going to be good. They're just a hobbyist. So they're going to be, you're going to need to like really work with them. And that said, I think Doug Kalish, the guy that we got, I think he did a great job. And this film was somewhat cursed actually, because he actually died before it was over.
Oh no!
Of like a certain type of cancer. But I got a text out of everybody. I got a text, and I guess I was the producer, so whatever. But I got a text from his wife saying like, "Hey, Doug's passed on. He really wanted to see the movie." And I'm like, "Oh." Yeah. And that thing could have been edited so much faster. I don't know what the hang up was back in the day. It took like 6 months for this, 20-minute movie, whatever. But the big thing is in the writing of it, I learned lessons of like, it should have all been in really one location. But instead we wanted to shoot in this diner. We found this awesome diner and we reached out to the owner and he was like this Greek guy. And we paid him, so much to do it. But the day that we showed up, he saw all of our gear and was like, you guys need to pay me more. And so we were just stuck. We were stuck, he's holding it over us basically. So I think I came out of the woodwork and forked over a lot more money to make it happen. To put him to bed, basically. He was like threatening legal stuff. And it's like, I don't even know what that would have been, but it's just like, just find the right partners. And if you know somebody's going to be weird, go in with the paperwork necessary to shut them up. And talk to my lawyer. My dad's a lawyer and he's going to sue your butt. We're going to be eating your butt in this diner. Anyway, so that came up, like while we were filming, he shows up and like walks in during one of the takes and burns it, and it just was a piece of work. But we just shot it terribly. We didn't storyboard anything, and this isn't necessarily on me. This was on my friend, the director. But pushing him to do that, we had like kind of a shot list, but we needed to problem solve things on the day of that just were eating our time. Like we could have problem solved that before when there wasn't a camera, when there wasn't an actor on set, where we weren't wasting anybody's time. My poor wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, played one of these dead bodies in this diner because these highwaymen basically show up and they kill everybody in this diner. The main character, the sheriff dude, the old guy, walks in like seconds after this has happened, and basically a conversation ensues. And it's just like a 15-minute kind of bloated, self-important type thing. But we just rushed through so much of the shooting of it that there's 2 shots that I wish we would have gotten that we didn't, which are key to the story if we wanted to tell it the way we did, which is a steaming cup of coffee, a close-up of a steaming cup of coffee, which would have communicated urgency, like that it had just happened. And with just like a close-up of that, and that would have allowed us to cut around like getting our sheriff guy in, because we did it in a one take, and you see the shadow of the camera guy on the wall in this one take. And so we ended up having to like do a little weird edit to get around it. And the other one is a close up on his side where a gun would be. So when he sees the bad guys, he immediately goes for a gun that he used to have as a sheriff, right? Like he's retired now, he's old, so he doesn't have it. But that's a tell that the bad guy realizes later on that he uses to identify him as a lawman. And so he references like, oh, I saw you reach for a gun that wasn't there. And it's like, yeah, but we didn't. Like we,
like the audience, it doesn't see it. Yeah.
So it just, fell apart basically. But I love that movie for that reason. Like taught me hardcore about coverage in the edit as well, like thinking like an editor on set. So it's like, okay, I'm going to stitch together this sequence. That's what storyboarding does. It allows you to kind of be an editor beforehand, and you're like, okay, a shot right here would be great. Like that's really important information to have, that cup of coffee or whatever. But my poor wife, she was one of the victims, and we had her lay on the ground for like 2 hours in like a puddle of blood, and you can barely see her in the movie, but it was hurting her back after like 30 minutes. And so she's like crying, like sobbing while under the, under this table, dead as a waitress. And it's like, you didn't have to suffer. It was just because we didn't plan the shots well enough.
Yeah, like plan them in a way that you're like, how can we not see them?
Yeah, we just like, we shot the thing with her in it, now get her out of here, as opposed to like, she's just going to lay there as we make things up. And it's just hardcore, it's too hardcore at like 3 a.m. at this diner, problem solving. But some of the stuff we did though is just amazing. We had this guy, I can't remember his real name, I'm sure it's in the credits, Bill Splatt, who did a fake dead body for us, because one of the patrons gets shot in the back of the head. And so he's like dead on the table with his head like blown in. And it looks awesome. One of the bad guys like reaches over him and eats his toast in one of the takes. So like grabs his toast off the dead guy's body. And we built a wall in the diner to make it just like one room. It had like this awkward kind of L shape, but we put an amazing jukebox on that wall. And then I found this picture of John Wayne that we hung up on there, and it had like blood splattered on it. And it was just really cool. I just wish we could have let those elements shine more, as opposed to just like, okay, we had 3 shots in the diner and that told the whole thing. Like we could have gone harder if we just had planned and storyboarded ahead of time. There was a lot of human misery that came out of that, unneeded, that I wish I could go back and change. But that was my film school, was that film.
Yeah, no, and I think it's cool. And we learn from these things because, you learn from all the mistakes that you make along the way and figure out like, oh, I could have cut some corners, or we didn't have to do it this way or eat up so much time. And I think that's where my strength's more logistic side of film and producing and stuff, because I want to be like as efficient with everyone's time. And even
hospitality.
At my work, like we had this one shoot where we had someone coming in, and it was like a series of interviews, but it was narrative. So you have like so many people, and then so many, like it was just logistically a little challenging, because we had our main person who was like this tough guy who would interview them and toughen up the employees.
Oh, okay.
But then we had the business owners at one end of the table, and then the tough guy, and then this rotating cast of people that he's interviewing. So you're like, okay, well, at any given point, there's like 3 of the guys are there, and then you change out this other thing. And someone who is new to filmmaking would probably just call everyone and be like, all right, just sit around until we need you. But I tried really hard to be efficient, to be like, all right, let's shoot around you. And I sold them on the idea of, because we use teleprompters as well.
Nice.
And basically we would do a wide where they would somewhat paraphrase or roughly get the script right, where you see everybody at the table. And then I would be like, all right, tough guy comes up, he leaves. I put the teleprompter where he was sitting, and we shoot just a solo on the guy being interviewed. So it looks like, and seeing it works. Like you don't see the cuts. You feel like he's actually like talking to the guy. But by doing that, we were like, okay, we're going to blast through the script really quick because they can read it. Because not everyone here is actors. Like some of them are just volunteers for work. So we can blast through the script. We don't need everyone sitting there all the time. It just worked. And it's like problem solving like that, of like, how can I be conscientious and courteous of people's time while also getting everything that we need?
Yeah, that's actually, I use that exact same thinking on, for my work. We did a fake podcast. I can actually talk about it now. It's for Zern Plumbing. And I made a fake podcast called It Happens. And it's basically a spooky thing where all these like crazy paranormal plumbing stories happen. And the owner of the business, Matt Zern, very funny guy, he is the host of the show, and he brings on these guests that have like crazy stories. And basically, he wasn't going to memorize a script, but I wrote a script. And then the actors who weren't their actors, and a lot of them had it like totally memorized, but we were able to shoot them just separately. We shot a wide of Matt, and then a wide of, we didn't move the camera, the same wide, but a reverse. And so, like you said, we just, whatever they were looking at was the teleprompter. We stitched that footage together, and in the close-ups, it's just super funny, and you would never know anything different. And it made it super efficient, where like we didn't need everybody there the whole time. But I mean, I think people memorizing lines is like, really important. I would never recommend doing the teleprompter on everybody.
No, teleprompter is a mixed bag, because some people can do it well and some people can't. And even if you can do it well and act through it, like, you can sometimes see in the eyes that they're reading. You can see the bounce of the thing. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, if your goal is to like have a fun set and care about the people on set, then I think that will bleed through in the film too, because you hear stories of just like treating everyone like a workhorse, and but everybody walks away sour, and it's like, all right, well,
having, especially so low to the ground, like if it's your first short or even your 10th short and you're not a big deal, then don't act like a big deal. It's your job to make the set as fun as possible. I mean, even Nightbird, I don't think the hardest I've ever laughed was on the Nightbird set. I wasn't supposed to be laughing though. So that was a problem, but it was during the fight scene of the couple. The man and his mistress are breaking up, and that's the whole story. Is like the Nightbird is a symbol for the infidelity of the husband, basically. But the husband is breaking up with his mistress, and just the lines I had written, they work really well as comedy lines. They don't really work in terms of serious. I mean, they do. They sold them. They did great, but the line was, he's trying to totally dismiss her, and he's like, "You were my waitress at a Buffalo Wild Wings." And the fact that he said Buffalo Wild Wings was just so unbelievably funny that my cast like kicked me off the set because I was laughing so hard. I was sweating. I was laughing so hard. I wish I had the footage of them saying the lines like that. I'm sure maybe somewhere I do, but yeah, that's the other thing, is like, buy a hard drive for every film you do. Like, don't just use like one master hard drive. Like, get a new one every time and label it and put it into cold storage. And it's like, that's where you're going to find that film. Because I feel like the stuff Here the Vulture Waits was on a hard drive, one of them, and it's just floated around for years. And Nightbird was lost for a long time, and then my producer moved and he found it. And I was like, I told you had it. Like, give me a break. But yeah, like those kind of logistical things I've learned to just like dot your I's, man. Like, just don't let anything slide by. Be as orderly as possible, because in the future, future years going to want to be able to dig back and find this exact shot or whatever, whether you're like shot listing things or script supervisors, like circle takes, that type of stuff, as opposed to just searching through hours of footage, or I don't know.
I'd also give the tip with this. This is something I've incorporated. I think we might have done it a little when we worked together, but I do it at my work now, and I do it personally, is making clean versions of your exports. And what that means, if you're an editor, highly recommend this, because you basically have your export and it's got music and it's got graphics and it's got whatever you've got in there. A clean version is just export, remove all the graphics, remove all the music, remove all the sound effects. So you just have the dialogue. It's going to feel weird, but if you export that at a high resolution, like 4K, whatever, in the off chance your raw footage corrupts or something, or you just need to make a quick change to something.
Yeah.
You don't have to go back into open an old project. You just can take the clean and you can put new music under it. You can put new graphics on top, because
that is God tier advice. God tier advice, because
saves you so much headache. Because I can't tell you the number of times that, I don't know, dude, someone even at work are like, "Hey, that video we did like 2 years ago, could you dig that up?" And you might be lucky and find the project file. You might be lucky and things relink, but then it just, a lot of times it doesn't. You can't do it. But if you have that clean version, you can rebuild a new version from that.
Yes, we in the digital era have lost the sense of danger when it comes to how much money goes into shooting on film. So like knowing, hey, and the acting was better when it was on film, because it's like, dude, you only get one take, or however many takes you can do, but you can't do infinite like digital. Digital, you can just sit here and do it until you're blue in the face, and you can't do that. And so knowing that it's money, what you're putting on the hard drive is money. Like that 10 grand that I won, there's a hard drive out there that has that 10 grand on it. Every shot that we put on there, all the music that we made, everything we paid somebody for ended up on that hard drive. I don't know where it's at now.
I lost.
But if you think about it, like, yeah, like that is, I could get back in there. And I even flirted with the idea of doing a re-edit of the 20-minute one, going like a black and white cut and cutting out this whole secondary story at the diner, or just starting on the diner because it's the coolest stuff. And just finding a new story in the limitations, basically. But the past always has value. Like, so going and having a clean export, like you never know, especially in the corporate space, like you and I have been before, like being able to reach into the past and have like, hey, we could find that footage and it doesn't have a thing burned into it, a lower third or whatever. Somebody gets promoted, something as benign as that, like in their title changes, but now you can't use that footage because in the lower third, it says his old job. Like, that's come back to bite me in the butt. So it's about being a really good representative of the future in the present. And just knowing like, dude, future me is going to hate me if we don't take care of this.
Yeah. And piggybacking on that, save your stuff to multiple hard drives. Like I personally try to keep it to like at least 2 places. But when I'm working on it, maybe it's in 3 places, like 3 drives in different locations. Just because, I don't know, like if you drop the one drive it's on, like he said, if it's $10,000 worth of work put in there and it's like, it's all on the hard drive and you trip and fall on it and crush it, you can't get it back. Make sure it's like somewhere else so that you can keep recopying it, but not if the only version is.
You just made me super nervous for my documentary because I have a main drive that I've given my editor, but I do have a backup, and it's actually right here. I
you just drop it. You drop it.
Yeah. No, I have a backup right here.
Nice.
So it also, and that surprisingly has all the footage on it. But that's still, and I think I have some stuff on the cloud. That's like kind of how I get around it, is like, having a cloud backup and then one cold storage, like stationary drive, and then one mobile drive. That's enough to get me being like, okay, we got it.
I feel like when it gets to full archive for me, then it will exist in 2 places. Like I have like 2 redundant archive drives.
Agreed. Yeah.
So but then if I'm working, then I usually have a working drive. So it's on both of those and then the working drive. So 2 to 3 places, just be careful.
Yeah.
It's easy to lose and the stuff corrupts and ages. So you want to make sure you've got backups of it.
That said, don't be a pack rat. Like with this type of thing, like we're recording this right now, I have a backup on Dropbox. But other than that, I don't keep another, like, of my audio. But once it's done, once it's posted, that's all it's going to be. Because it's just, we're churning. I'm not going to cater to, I need to go back. And I mean, maybe it would be great to find the first video one that we have. Okay, yeah, I might be sentimental about that at some point. But I also can make the hard decision now and be like, I don't need it. Like, I can't envision a future where I would absolutely positively need that. Oh, in like the highest res possible.
And it just depends on your project. I think I still have some of the gigantic raw red camera files from my original short film. Probably don't need those. I have not messed with them in a long time. And like something like this, the odds of us needing one specific episode, the raw video after we've made the episode, it's like, we'll probably just use the episode. I have thought about that eventually, just combing through even StoryFellas, and it takes up a lot of storage. There's a lot of, we're doing like hour-long episodes. StoryFellas. That's our spinoff where it's like Pawn Stars, but with us. But I agree. Like, save the things that are precious, but don't be precious about everything.
Yeah.
I guess is the kind of.
Yeah, you got to be wise. You got to be wise about it. And just like, okay, am I ever really going to return to this? That said, I wish I still had the raw files or the original export of A Boy and His Bike, the first short film I made. I don't have that. I had to rip it from Campus Movie Fest's YouTube page. And it's like, that's good. I have it. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I'm like, I just wish I could see the outtakes. Like that, us tumbling down the hill. Like that existed somewhere. That's on a hard drive, maybe somewhere. Like, and that's just so weird to think about. I don't know. But yeah, being a good steward and being very cautious about things. One, you gotta making short films, especially as a student, you gotta just get burned. You gotta just lose the hard drive. You gotta, it's just gonna happen. What we're saying to you won't make any sense until it's happened to you. It can happen to you, but yeah, I think that's what's fun about it. That's wisdom is knowledge beaten out on the anvil of experience.
Oh, so, I like that.
You're just Tony Stark in a cave. Tony Stark built this in a cave. It really is like, purchased in the blood, sweat, and tears of that experience. So just going out and making things. I mean, that's what's so fun about reoccurring podcasts. It's just like, okay, we did that last time. Okay, we finally got our groove because we've just beaten it out over time. We learned the hard lessons, and hopefully the audience is none the wiser.
Yeah, it's just putting your reps in. It's just doing it over and over again, and you get better. And I don't know about you, it's interesting to get to a point that you can. I feel like for a long time I would, especially early when I was in film school, I would make things and I was just like, it just doesn't look how I want it to look in my head, And then eventually you cross that threshold where you're like, oh, I can do what I want to do in my head. Yeah. And then from there, like, this is what you want to do in your head, you surpass it and you're like, oh, I can do it. And then it kind of elevates, well, what if I could do this? And you're just kind of always climbing.
Yeah. I love that. And that's the key behind just making things. Like you said, just putting in the reps. And that's what shorts are good for. And that's the thing is, like, you really have to go into it the mindset again that you're nobody and you're making something, so you should make it as fun and easy as possible for everyone involved, including yourself. Like knowing that you're going to fail in some way, knowing you're going to back yourself against the wall, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. That's the the juice at that point. That's what you need. That's what you're in it for. Actually, your short film is probably not going to move the needle anywhere, but you will absorb that experience, and eventually, like you said, you'll be able to envision greater things. And I don't know. Tell a good story, maybe.
Maybe I like it. I like it. Well, folks, if you have any, if you've written any short films or have made them, send them our way. We'd love to see them.
I'll review them. I'm a formal judge. I was a judge for Campus Movie Fest, so
he's seen them all. He will be harsh.
Oh, so harsh, man! You will get just absolute. No, I won't be harsh. I'll be gentle, but know that I have seen lots and lots and lots of short films, so I would love to watch yours.
And even if you don't, hope that you guys have fun listening to this. Maybe you're not filmmakers and it's just interesting to hear the behind the scenes of what you have to think of as a filmmaker. Maybe you're an aspiring filmmaker and this is helpful to, like we said, we can tell you, but it's going to be experience that's the true teacher, because you're like, I don't really get it. And then it happens. You're like, oh, I do get it. I get what they were saying. But best of luck to everyone out there who are trying to tell stories, whether that's whatever medium that takes.
Yeah, I wish the exact same. Godspeed, because you're in good company.
Well, Zach, you have any closing remarks to our audience here before we let them go?
I hope to see you at the next episode with episode 50. Our unaired pilot episode. And again, we've got some more fun stuff in the pipeline here. So just keep your eye on your feed and hit the next StoryFellas episode. Hopefully it blesses you.
Yes. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
See ya.
Thank you all for listening to StoryFellas, a part of the Pemmican Studios podcast network. Check out our show notes for bonus material, links, and more. To find out more about our current projects, send us messages, and suggest ideas for the show, go to StoryFellasPodcast.com. If you liked what you heard, share the show with a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to grow this community. Until next time, go make and break those stories.